You may hear someone tell you that the proper way to make money while farming or ranching is to do X or to do Y. Today, we will talk about those topics while also incorporating how to do it within a family business structure. Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I'm Calen. The bearded one is Brandon, my co-host and father. If you're new to the channel, like, comment, and subscribe. While you're at it, check out our social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Rumble. For those returning, thank you as always. Now, let me start my timer because I totally forgot to. All right, there we go. This is how you ranch or farm. You may have heard someone say that before, and I'll start with this statement. Do whatever it takes to make you successful. All right, so as I transition over here to my tablet, again, it's everything that makes you successful. I recently tweeted this concept and it actually got quite a bit of traction. The tweet, this is what it said in quotes: to sell somebody to tell, not sell, to tell somebody this is how you ranch or farm successfully when you are in two very different regions is intellectually dishonest. Agriculture isn't a cookie cutter business. And man, did that take off. People were retweeting and liking, and they absolutely agreed with it. First, we'll begin with the concept of how to make a profit in cattle ranching. Then we'll move on to an article about working through family business, like I had talked about. So first, to start off, how to be successful in ranching or farming. I was recently on YouTube and I was looking at some stuff, topics to discuss and whatnot. But if you look at a book titled Salad Bar Beef by a man named Joel Salatin, a lot of people at least in the ag Twitter sphere will reference him a lot. I'd like to read that book sometime, but the person who was kind of analyzing this book said that some of the things he points out as ways to succeed in raising cattle for beef production are three main things. And those 3 points are this, and supposedly, like I said, because I haven't read it, but it was explained through this YouTube person, and they make money too, so they're probably trying to get a little bit of shock value in there. But according to this channel synopsis of Mr. Salatin's book, he states that you need to do this: 1, make all cattle grass based; reduce your feed by using rotational grazing methods; and 3, avoid expensive infrastructure. Man, let's just stop right there. We do that. Yet,
well, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was like, yet we still struggle with stuff. We had that discussion, and we'll actually talk about that next week. The discussion we had with our annual meeting, and we still lost a bunch of money last year. So it's like, come on, man. But what I want to point out is that Mr. Salatin, I looked at his bio a little bit. He's from Swope, Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley. So considerably different from places like us in South Central Montana. So what's my point? Use information to improve your knowledge and skills, but don't solely rely on it due to different locations, as I stated earlier. As my tweet gained traction, at least one person replied directly referencing Mr. Salatin. And I'm not sure why, but my supposition would be that it's due to many people trying to reference him and others like him as ways to legitimize their agricultural decisions. To me, this is extremely frustrating, especially because people like us, yes, you can pick up on some of the small details from videos, articles, and conferences, but you should not rely solely upon them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dad to give his take.
Well, what was number 1?
Number 1 was make all cattle grass based.
Aren't they? As a natural animal, they're a grass-based animal.
That's true.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, and I think what he's trying to do, maybe, I don't know what the man's trying to say, other than it does take money to put corn into a cow, for instance.
Well, and I think it's also recently, it's the whole grass-based beef phase.
Okay, right? That's marketing. That's right. Marketing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that phase. So that's a very broad statement without any context.
Well, I think
to put that in.
I would say the context is the second point: reduce your feed by using rotational grazing methods. So, like you said, make it grass based, which is the marketing. Reduce your feed, which is the don't buy things like corn, extra stuff. And then the third was avoid expensive infrastructure, which is like, don't get the nicest tractor out there. Get the one that works, that it's affordable, that you can actually use. So
yeah. Number 2 point. Let's go to point number 2. And that's reduce the amount of grass you put into them. They got to eat a certain amount. They got to maintain. I think maybe what he's meaning there is maybe reduce the impact on the grass or the resource you have, is the way I would probably say that more, because that can sure be misconstrued or taken out of context based on, you know, a number of things. I mean, you can take that a lot of different ways. You
Yeah.
can't just say, hey, I'm going to cut your ration in half, but I need you to keep growing. You know, it's like my grandpa said, and I have these, dad said, grandpa said, grandpa talked about a neighbor that just had all of his cows completely broke at eating and almost broke a drinking, and then they all died on it, all the nerve of them, you know. So
Yeah.
you still got to put that input into them. You got to keep a healthy animal.
Well, here's the, again, based off of the limited amount I saw on YouTube, and then what I would say based off of what I have, the 3 points in front of me is make all cattle grass based. To me, that means marketing, like we said, say, you know, pandering to that specific thing, you know, kind of along the lines of all natural, grass based, no hormones, stuff like that's kind of where it's going. Number two, reduce your feed by using rotational grazing methods, meaning don't have to supplement everything because you're taking those animals and you're moving them from pasture to pasture accordingly to the season and to how the ground is being used. Again, maximizing the land, also not having to get the outside stuff, using more cost to essentially invest into the livestock, using minimal infrastructure that you already have. And then third, avoiding expensive infrastructure by, again, you know, hey, reusing stuff, recycling stuff, making the most of what you have, getting cheaper equipment that still runs fine, but you're not going to have to spend a whole lot of extra money to bring back into a life. Or, you know, that's how I see those three specific things. So
Yeah, some of that infrastructure stuff is delaying needed type. Fencing is a big deal for us.
right.
You know, and I've got some fence that have wanted to replace now for about 4 years, but because of where things have gone with income versus outgo on, you know, hay and markets and the whole ball of wax, none of which we control, by the way. We're not selling something through a storefront or a vendor where we set the price. We don't do that, which is a giant thing that people don't understand. Anyway, making do with what you got. And there's some fences that we really got to do something with. I have patched and repaired, and it's, you know, hopefully if we have to, we'll make it another year. We just will. But he's right. Don't buy expensive stuff. Don't put up pipe paneling everywhere when woven wire or cow panels or a 6-wire barbed wire fence will do just fine. I mean, there's a giant cost difference in all of those. So yeah, you can't just spend yourself into oblivion and then hope you're going to stay in business. You can't do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And here's where, realistically, looking through my notes, understanding the conversation we're having and everything, I think the back end part, and kind of the intro to that conversation, and then the back end, kind of how I concluded that first initial part that we're talking about here, is it's also the whole how-to idea, right? So I think too many people, they either, I don't know how many people are watching our channel, other than, you know, we have right currently about 700 subscribers. So okay, I know there's 700 people interested in our channel, right? But how many are actually watching us consistently? I couldn't tell you, other than if we were to just do everything based off of view metrics, right? So my idea is, you know, let's assume all of those people who are watching us every week are coming to us and going, oh, this is how you do it. Well, my other thing would be like, this guy is from Virginia. Okay, if you're from Virginia, yeah, maybe that is a way to do it, or it's one of the really best ways to do it, because he's analyzed it. He's been doing agriculture there for however many decades, right? For us, maybe it'd be, hey, if you're in Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, maybe you can kind of understand where we're coming from, because we're very similar environment, ecosystem, the way the land is used, it's very similar, right? Versus if we were to go across the mountains and we're in Dunroven Ranch, and if let's assume they're multiple hundreds of acres, which they're not, they're very small, but let's assume they were a ranch that did that, then it would be a totally different setup. And so, like, my real big point to this is, it's not you don't just take what other people are saying and go, oh, this is exactly how you do it. Like, no, it's not cookie cutter. You had an article at one point where cookie cutter horse training, right? And I think it's the same thing. It's not just the same exact thing for every single thing. You have to adapt, you have to mold it, you have to understand there's other things that need to be either added or taken away, because it doesn't always apply as rigidly as people would like it to when it's like 2 + 2 = 4. Maybe it's
Well,
2 + 2
yeah, and
+
that
1.
changes.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to be responsive when something doesn't work that has always worked for whatever factor A that is changed slightly. You have to adjust.
Right.
So absolutely, no, that's 100%. Think about the difference, though. We've been an agrarian society out here in the West, really, just over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
How long have they been farming and tilling in that country as an agrarian society? About 500 years.
Right. I mean,
Right.
some of the
So,
first settlers were, I think, what was Jamestown, 1608, if I remember right.
right in
1607.
there,
Yeah.
1607, I think. Yeah. So, that's a big difference, 400 years, but still, that's an enormous difference in the amount of time that they have been able to prove what's going on out there. And, you know, they're everything's different. The rains, the soils, the grasses, the
Right.
animals. We have antelope. They never had antelope out there. Never had antelope out there. So Lewis and Clark discovered Antelocarpa americana, and it was its own genus species.
Right.
They'd never seen that before. So a couple of things like that. So everything's completely different, including agrarian type approaches to getting the best out of that ground or animals that are on it.
Right. Well, and I think it also goes to the discussion we had with the high desert homestead, which we talked about homesteading, and he said, he's in Arizona, but going back to Tennessee and Kentucky, totally different ways of doing it, and that's my point, is people need to stop going to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any other, I don't know, books, published articles, journals, and saying this is how we have to do it. I'm sick and tired of seeing this is my rant. I'm sick and tired of seeing the agricultural community tell people this is how you have to do it. And it's the same with the horse world too, when it comes to training animals. Like, if you're going to be a successful horse trainer, this is how you have to do it. If you don't do it, then you're trash. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, really? We're just completely closing off our minds to all of other aspects to how we deal with agriculture or equine care or anything like that. If we were to do that, we'd still be stuck in the Civil War, amputating legs for the smallest of things. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, part of that though, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that as well. Let's take the horse training part. There is entire marketing and been millions of dollars been made on, you need to do it the way I do it, buy my
Right.
tapes, videos, books, and paraphernalia, and you too will be successful like me, and don't listen to anybody else. They're wrong. I mean, there's been a lot of money made that way. I mean, it's that in itself is the marketing of that, which arguably is not necessarily accurate all the time.
Right.
So, and again, that's my cookie cutter training article that it's been published, and I stand by that still. Nothing's changed. One of the things about us, I think the viewers will notice, is that we never tell anybody what to do on their place.
Yeah.
We're always saying, you got to do what's best with the assets you have, and grass, water, land, animals, what you can do with it, your weather, all of that stuff is very individualized. Now, the principles are the same. Can't get that wrong. You want to be sustainable. You almost have to be. I don't care where you're at. You've got to be able to have this thing repeatable year after year. You want to have more income than expense. That's just a principle. How you get there is another issue. The infrastructure thing is, you don't want to put money into something that's not going to make you money.
Right.
And you may change your approach to something. Say something like us. We've got an opportunity, and we've taken the opportunity, and I'm working on it on a very small scale, to custom finish for direct to customer, butcher steers, butcher heifers. And we may have to add some different type of feeding infrastructure to do that. That's potentially going to make us some money. So there's the, maintaining infrastructure, and then there's adding infrastructure if it makes you some money or continues to keep you so that you're sustainable, or so that you can carry on, frankly, not go broke, be again responsive to what's going on around you. Always trying to, this is like a survival thing. What's the one thing you're trying to do when you survive in a survival situation? You're always trying to improve your situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even as comfortable as you can always make it better, always improve your situation. And that's kind of where we're at.
And maximize efforts, really the two things: improve situation, maximize efforts. If you can get something like for example, like a snare where you don't have to do anything, it's passively, that's your passive income, is passively obtaining food source. Like, that's a great way of doing it.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it's about using less calories personally to be able to get more calories in. I mean, it's the same exact thing: more income, less outgo. So the principles are all the same. It's just a matter of, applying them and not knowing what you're talking about with someone else's part of the country.
Right.
You can have land consultants, and there's guys that use their expertise. They went through school, same degree basically as your brother Braden.
Right.
And they have put that to work for them. But the ones that I know that have done that and been successful, they learned as they went, because they were watching what needed to be changed. And it wasn't all what they learned in school or in a textbook.
Right.
You can't apply that textbook. And I think that's your point. The other part of that is, you can't go from one part of the country and say, oh yeah, this is the way we do it here. You can run 30 cows on that acre there. You can't, not here.
No.
So it is very much customized, and it really is customized business. Because let's take a car dealership, for instance. Where do they put big car dealerships? Where there's larger population.
Exactly.
Or it's large enough that people will come to you because you have a variety of what will fit your needs. In agriculture, you are where you're at, and you take your commodity into where it is needed. So not everybody is going to be there and need what you have, because it isn't necessarily a small niche where you control all of it. I've got every car, or I've got every cow, and I'm the only guy, or there's only a couple of us to buy from. So every city has car dealerships in them. Those car dealerships essentially are running the same. There's some differences, I'm sure, in some of their small business deals, but you got inventory on a cement lot, and that cement lot stays the same whether it's 100 degrees in the shade, it's raining, or it's a beautiful sunny day, or it's cold. It doesn't change really what you have as a product and what you have to do to that product. It may change your foot traffic in, but it's not going to change your product and how you're going to handle that. So it's the same way with going to another part of the country. If they don't know what you are experiencing or how to run your stuff, I challenge them. They'll be broken a year if they try to run what we do here, like they do in, say, like you said, the Shenandoah Valley. Great fertile valley. Holy cow. I mean, there's songs written about that, right?
Right. I mean, it was one of the heartland of the Civil War because of the productivity. Yeah.
Right. So when you place us there, we may not flourish either, because we would be more conservative about what we could do to that ground and how much we could do. It would take us a while to spool up to what the carrying capacity, for instance, is, and what we could really get out of that ground and the grasses. We'd have to learn that. So you can't take and swap owners and expect everything to run as efficiently as each are doing it on their own place where they know it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that I wanted to point out, and I think you did a good job of pulling that together. Was we always talk about the East. We always talk about the East struggling to come West because they would probably overestimate the productivity, but I think that's the best way of putting it. Is for us, if we were to go the opposite direction, we would completely underestimate the productivity and we would probably lose money in that sense because we would not be maximizing the usage of the assets available to us. And in a sense, we would drive our own selves into the ground versus more external stuff. It'd rather be internal issues.
Yeah, I think you'd have a leakage of the income
Yeah,
instead
that's
of
a good
a
way of
leakage
putting
of
it.
the outgo, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of the difference in it, in the approach for one individual to do, to go to a different place in order to do that business. I'm not sure really how one would do that without talking to people, though. I mean, you would be like, "Hey, how you doing? I see you're doing something a little different there. I'm not from here."
Yeah.
You know, really. I mean, I would be looking around and seeing what was going on around me. I remember leaving high school and I went into the oil patch right away, you know, because the place ain't big enough for both of us. Uh, See ya. We got a set of luggage and a pair of boots for Christmas that year, and some cooking utensils, skillets, and I went, loud and clear, got it, you know. And one of my advice my dad gave me, because I had no idea what to expect, you know, I just got this job sight unseen. I knew I'd come from a ranch and could work. And I said, I don't know what kind of gear you get to get. And he goes, you take a look at the guys who've been there the longest. Look at what they're wearing. Look at what they're using. Then boots, gloves, to coveralls, to whatever their winter gear is. Take a look at it. Ask them what they wear, why they wear it. And he said, you're going to have a consensus on a lot of those guys that have been around what works.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to reinvent it. Copy them. They're smart. Why not capitalize off of what they've already experienced? And I think you would do the same thing in a business going somewhere else. Why wouldn't you?
We do it. We always, it's a running joke in the Army is there's no such thing as plagiarism. I'm just using the same idea some other guy did and trying to make it better. You know, if you have something that you've already created, why should I reinvent the wheel? I'll take the same PowerPoint or the same memorandum for record and just tweak it to how I need it rather than create something brand new. I'm not going to waste time. I'm not going to waste energy. If it's already there, might as well take it.
If it works and it's efficient and it serves a purpose,
right?
What's the problem? Right. Just today, you know, I was out, got done feeding, and I was out on the highway and had to wait for a vehicle to go past me, and so I didn't, you know, bump into him. But it was a neighbor, and he's pulling off to feed, and I saw he had a round bale of straw. He pulled in the approach to go in, and I just pulled in. And just we visit once in a while, and just, you know, we're so busy we just don't take the time to do that. We wave on the road, passing each other or meeting each other. And I said, hey, how's it going? He goes, good. And I said, you know, you're welcome to dump that straw over there for these cows if you want on the other side of the fence. And he kind of laughed, you know, and he goes, yeah, I know it's kind of tough, but you know, he's feeding straw to his yearlings and some barley straw, but still it's got some in it, but it isn't like having hay.
Right.
And we talked a little bit about that.
Nutritional value. If people are asking,
nutritional value.
There's not as much nutritional value in straw as there would be regular grass hay or even alfalfa.
No, not even close. It's a filler. Right. It's not good hay at all or good feed. Yeah, but I guess you can grind it and you can
the best way of putting it is if you were to have a good meal where it's like a steak, salad, a bunch of greens and stuff like that versus to just eat potato chips all day. That would be kind of the difference.
It kind of would be, yeah. In a way, I mean, straw is straw. It's got no real nutritional value. And this was barley straw, malt barley straw, where the malt has already been taken off of it. You know, the heads are off it. But he's supplementing with some high protein lick. You know, we're not doing that. I was able to find some hay, but his cost is also extremely high because he still has to have that straw, and he's supplementing it with this lick, you know, a protein supplement. So he's doing the best he can as well. And we're just doing things entirely differently, you know, bordered up next to each other. So still different ways, different approaches. It's about having what you got and what you're doing with them. We visited a little bit about that, the different types and some of the pitfalls about that. Why wouldn't I ask him about that? And he's, you know, I'm not getting into his business. I'm just asking how it worked for him. If, you know, do you like it? What do you think of it? And those are the kind of some of the responses you get. And people are, for the most part, I think they're happy to help.
Yeah. Well, and I think it kind of goes back to something I've said before is, I've had a drink with a buddy before back home on leave, and I said, hey, just out of curiosity, what's your bull to cow ratio for saturation? And he was like, oh yeah, we try and float between one bull to 25 or 30 cows. And we're like, oh, okay. Because we try to go around 20 cows per bull. And then my next question, my follow-up question to that was, okay, because you have a slightly higher ratio than we do in terms of more cows rather than less cows, we have better saturation in that term, but the ratio is smaller, right? So the question is, how is your outcome when it comes to dry cows? How many of them turn out to not be pregnant at the end of the year because of that less saturation? He goes, honestly, it's about this much. Like, okay, that's about the same amount as us. So sometimes it's just the difference in the breed. Maybe it might be a difference in feed, but just being able to have those questions, and that's what you're talking about when in this terms of feed and supplementation of the herd to keep them going throughout the winter. It's very much the same. No judgment. It's just trying to understand where somebody's coming from, their mentality, their experience, and how things work.
Well, and they may have, excuse me, they may have their cows where they're on a rest rotation, like a mob type of grazing, where they've got a bunch of them in a smaller section with a single water source and shade.
Right.
So they've got them concentrated where you can take a bull and you can put them up against more cows that way. Or like us is pretty open. Some of the water is concentrated, other parts of it is strung out for, altogether maybe a mile and a half in a couple of different springs. So, and no shade. So, it's a whole different way of approaching what do you have, how's your behavior of your animals going to be. Right. But then like this summer, what happened? Our dry percentage was way low, normal. Theirs was way high, like 4 times higher than normal. So it worked for us to maintain that bull to cow ratio as a very tight, 20-1 or right in there, which it paid off. It doesn't take many live calves to pay for a bull or bull's keep over a little bit of time.
Yeah. With that,
but you're right. I'm not judging how they do it. I mean, it works for them. It's just we've had some weather influences this year that it hurt everybody.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Sometimes maybe more saturation will give you better consistency over time.
Yeah.
To be determined.
Yeah. Well, that's right. You just don't know. I mean, and yes, could we not buy a bull and not run them and not feed them and save a little money? Yes. How are you going to measure whether that worked or not, though? Necessarily, Right. So you do what you think is right based on, again, how are those animals going to behave? Are they going to breed up? Are they going to scatter out? Are they going to come in? Some of these cows and bulls won't see each other for, a month, 45 days. That would be bad.
Yeah. Now to the second part of the discussion. So the second point, how to successfully operate within a family business. I think these lessons are important for any industry, but they're especially valuable for agriculture for those not understanding. The 4 points within a Drovers article, I reference Drovers a lot, much like Ag Daily. It's got some good information in there. They identified 4 common issues within a family business and how to fix those. So I'll go through the 4 issues, and then I think what we'll do is we'll talk issue by issue as we go through. The first one is undefined roles within a family business. Having blurry boundaries, very similar, but they do differentiate a little bit. Having detrimental nepotism is how they put it. And then echo chambers. So starting with undefined roles, this article said one way to fix the undefined roles within a family business is to set abilities or personalities to roles specifically to people that will maximize success for the business. The number 2 part of that was everyone needs to respect boundaries. And then, of course, create ownership and that way it will limit the overlap that people are doing. So if you say, hey, I need you to go focus on this, I need you to go focus on that, that way they're both working on separate things. They might be similar, but they'll be separate things, and they won't be doing the exact same task and doubling the man hours on something that doesn't need to be doubled. So I just want to turn it over to you and see what your thought was on that.
That is a really, really hard thing. That is probably the dynamics of that are, I think, worse than going to a job owned by a third party, and you're a worker with coworkers and you have jobs to do. I think it's harder than that is, because those sometimes have defined jobs or defined roles, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes those overlap. But when you've got family, dynamics and personalities that you know each other so well, their strengths, their weaknesses. I think their overall premise is spot on. I put people where they have the best desire. For one, you got to have the want to. If I don't want to do something, I'm not probably going to do the best job at it, because I'm not really that thrilled about it. Take Braden, for instance. Braden, he's good with horses. He likes, having his horse. He likes to work on him, but he doesn't care to train him. That's not his bag. And then likewise, I'm not your grass guy.
Neither am I.
I mean,
it bores me to death. And he gets so excited.
and he gets geeked out about it.
Oh,
He is our grass guy. He is what we depend on to say, okay, what do we need to do here? And you have to step back and don't be afraid to be questioned. You should never be afraid to be questioned. If you are so insecure about what you think is right, and you don't want to be questioned, then you've got a larger problem at hand. So I think it's about, when I'm questioning, it's about, I want to know, I want to educate. Let's critically think our way through this thing a little bit. Help me think through it. What are you thinking? Rely on what they know. And then at the same time, by doing that, then you make us all involved, so that we can all have some level of expertise, so we can fill a role if we need to. If I said to Braden, I said, hey, I've got to have this horse trained. Can you do it? He should be able to go, you know what? Okay, it's do the same way. You can step into those roles and do them, but it's not what your desire is. It's not what you want to do, but you can. And so that's the purpose of, I think, putting them where they want to be, where they excel at, and God reward them when they do a good job. When they don't do a good job, don't beat the hell out of them, because it isn't always their fault.
Yeah.
If it is, then you got another deal. You can't change it at that point, except that you can go from there and adjust. I mean, you can't undo something that's failed necessarily.
Well, another part, the third part, we'll go back to the second one because it goes to the second overall issue that was identified. But the third point to successfully getting through the undefined roles issue that the article defined was to also create ownership and limit the overlap. So what you're talking about is exactly that. It's creating the ownership of, hey, Braden's the grass guy. Let him do the grass stuff, identify what issues are, how we can fix it. Whereas me, this is a great example of doing it, is I can't physically be at the ranch right now because I'm 1,500 miles away being Mr. Army for a little bit. So what's my only part of this? It's to do the digital and the social media part as much as I can. So, and Braden has told me he has absolutely no desire to really do that. He'll help us, give suggestions and stuff, and he wants to be part of the conversation on occasion here on the YouTube channel, but he really has no desire to assist digitally or be the IT guy. So that becomes my role. Now, have we just definitively and explicitly stated, hey, you will do this and you will do that? No. Has it happened to work out that way? Yes, thankfully. But there, it's one of those things where not, this is a unique situation, but if you were to physically be out there, everybody every day, then it would have to turn into, hey, today I need you to fix this fence. I need you to go over here and I need you to take care of these animals. We've got a half dozen animals that are hurt. I need you to work on doctoring them up or whatever it is. That would be maybe a way of applying that in that particular sense.
Well, the whole process is owned by everybody.
Right.
So when there's a priority, everybody jumps on it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so it's as simple as that. I mean, it's just like, oh, wait, oh, grass guy. Yeah, sorry, I can't help you today. I got some other stuff to do. No, when they need help, that's the priority. It's for the good of whatever you're doing. You got some fence that's down, something happens. You got a fire comes through and it takes out a bunch of fence posts on a fence or burns a fence up. You got to get that fence back.
Right.
Everybody's on it. Doesn't matter what your job is. That is your job now, and you just work together to do it. One of the problems with the family dynamics, and people do this, you see people do this at work. You have some dysfunctional groups, and some people are just jerks, and some people don't mean to do it, but they do, or some people take it wrong. They're thin-skinned, but everybody's got that red button.
Yeah.
And
well, that's a later, we can actually get to that point. So hold on.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. The big red button. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Go
ownership is ownership of everything. Everybody owns, it's for the good of all of it, but you specialize and then, you give your credibility and your expertise to something that is going to make you excel and make the place excel, which reflects on everybody else. I mean,
Right.
if you can get some more grass out of a pasture, good God, what have you done to the overall thing? Or you've saved something, or you know what, we got to cut some animals back because we're taking this grass down too much. You do that. That's the right decision. So you're helping the grass guy at that point.
Yeah.
So and everybody's perspective, their viewpoint, what they're seeing or what they think, all of it should be considered, and it should be weighed. Just because it isn't the best idea, or you're not thinking of something, or what you come up with doesn't work for whatever reason, you can't take that personally.
Right.
I mean, it's, you gotta critically think your way through things as a group. And, I think generally we're pretty good at critically thinking stuff, because it's like, okay, as you do that, a priority of what needs to happen kind of, it gets exposed.
Yeah. Now to the next point, they stated blurry boundaries. So this was the second solution to the first issue that we said, which was undefined roles. But they said blurry boundaries in the Drovers article. Nobody, within a family dynamic, it can become blurry. People don't quite know where they fit in. So to go back to the original issue, everyone respect boundaries. So going to that, the other three solutions were separate family from business. So here's family business, here's business, clear family discussion and clear business discussion. So again, separating it, thinking more like waffles, cones or boxes rather than noodles and pipes and stuff like that. It's kind of like the male versus female thinking, and then
Bags and boxes. Yeah.
Yep. And then create buy-in as well. So the way to fix those blurry boundaries, get the buy-in. You already kind of hit it a little bit, but then separate. Really, the big thing. Hey, don't bring up something that happened last night because you're upset at the dinner table with what's happening right now. That stays in the house. This stays here. We're focused on this particular solution, on this issue at hand. We are not pulling out what happened at the dinner table or in front of the TV or the phone call that happened last night. Like, stop. We are focused here and now on what's going on, what's for the benefit of the business, the livestock, and the land that we're working.
Well, and that takes some personal discipline on everybody's part. I mean, it really is. It's hard to do sometimes. It really, really is. Letting things go sometimes that are like, you know what, this isn't the time. And I am not good at that. Everybody knows. I mean, I feel everything is my responsibility. So I kind of think that, well, I got to weigh in on everything and I got to have it my way. And that's not true. And I've tried to be better about that. I'm trying to be better all the time because, I can see the end of my life coming and I'm not going to be around. So I got to let go some too. And so that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And I think, as we're going through this, and I'll probably say it again at the end, but the real point out of all this is just respect,
Yeah,
and sometimes respect is simply, you know what, I don't need to say that. I'm just going to be quiet, let it pass, because I have something more important than what I need to say right here and right now.
Well, and God help your mother. She's probably done more for my personal growth. I mean, slow as it's been, but it's like, really, did you need to say that? Did it do any good? Did it help?
Yeah.
Was it productive? No. Made me
Right.
feel better. Okay, that's about you, not about what's important. And so yeah. So one thing that I've come to learn that nobody gives a shit about your opinion unless they agree with it.
Yeah. Well,
Think
or
about that.
and sometimes it does happen, but normally it's over a couple of long necks or a big
Right.
glass of bottle or a glass of whiskey. But it's nobody really wants to hear your opinion unless you're sitting there and you're enjoying each other's company and you actually want to have that discussion. Most of the time, it's listen, I don't care, just go do this.
Right. But at the same time, when you're passing around opinions like that or viewpoints, there is some value there. And
Right.
that's where you have to ask the question, why? What are you thinking? Not just throw it out there with no reason. I mean, bring some receipts to this statement.
Right.
This is what I'm seeing. This is what I think. This is what I've learned. That is super valuable. I mean, some of the best conversations and stuff we've mulled over have come over at dinner table.
Right.
Happens all the time. When we're together. I mean, that's when it's most important. Or sitting around drinking a beer and saying, "Hey, I want to do this." Well, that's stupid. Yeah, you're right. It is kind of stupid.
Yeah, and that's normally my brother saying that to me. But
yeah, well, yeah.
I'm gonna move on to the next point though, and this is where your big red button can come in. So hold on. Their point was, oftentimes we have detrimental nepotism. So really be careful of who owns what. Again, kind of going to boundaries and stuff like that. A big one, and this is the big red button part, not be walking on eggshells around everybody or self-created obstacles. Be forthcoming with things, but don't be so timid. Make sure you still hit things head on and you address them, but you're not just like kind of like tiptoeing around everything. And then hold family and outsiders to the same standard. So you might have a hired hand come in, or you might be doing just a day worker or something like that. Or hey, you have somebody marry into the family. They're not technically family, they're kind of an outsider, and maybe they'll gain that position eventually as a member of the family, but initially they're an outsider. Everybody needs to be the same standard regardless. If you're going to have poor behavior, everybody needs to be addressed the exact same way, and not just kind of, oh, it's okay, he's the little brother, he'll get over it. No. Address the issue, fix it immediately, and make sure everybody's held to the exact same standard. Otherwise it causes rifts within the family as well, because this person gets favoritism over that person, and so on and so forth.
Well, and if somebody's idea is taken and expanded on and it works, there can be a little resentment that they didn't listen to me, right? I mean, it's just the way it can be, not only in a family but outside of a family, in a work dynamic too. But I had to do that very early, and I still probably wasn't as good at it as I could have been, because I don't think anybody's perfect at it. But trying to teach your spouse something, whether it's golfing or shooting or riding or whatever it is between spouses, is a very, very difficult, tenuous thing, because each other so well, and there are not really any boundaries there. Right. You're that intimate with each other, each other so well that there's not that boundary there of, ooh, socially I shouldn't say this. I mean, so I had to think of your mom like a paying client,
right? At certain times, yeah.
Yeah, when I was teaching her how to ride and work with the horses early on, because there's a lot to it. There's way more to it than people really get until you've been into it for a while. You're multitasking. You're doing 5, 6, 7 things at once, and adjusting, and it takes time to get there. It takes hours. And so I would have to treat her like a client, because sometimes I go, no, put your feet like this. That's not the way you would respond to a client, right? So I would always have to do that mindset. And even as frustrated as I would get, and you get frustrated with clients, they're not listening, they're not responding. So you got to change the way you approach it. And doing that is important. And it's important to do that with each other, so that you're not beating on each other all the time.
Yeah.
or
Agreed.
getting defensive. I mean, that's kind of the way that has to be. But that nepotism is, and walking on eggshells is an interesting one, because your brother's not shy, you're not shy, I'm not shy. I mean, we say what we think. We just do,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and that can be a problem. I mean, because we tend to think that we're all thick-skinned enough that the other one's going to be okay with it, and you're not. You're not. The delivery's not there. Your mom is the one who's most timid, but she's also the one that's most kind and the most spot on how to deal with each other too.
Yeah.
I mean, really, think about it.
I think it's also the difference between the one woman versus the three guys.
Right. Right.
Like, no. And then we start
Right.
cussing at each other, and she's like, boys. Is that really the way
Yeah.
we need to handle this?
Well, not quite that bad, but yeah, the potential is there. Large families. Oh my God, there's been some dysfunction in neighbor families. I've seen it, like, oh my God, I can't believe they talk like that to each other. How do they get anything done? They don't. It's like what one does, the other one will undo.
Yeah.
And just to make a point, or it's just dysfunction. And how much wasted time is there, and non-productive effort is put into that. I mean, that's just a giant sinkhole that you don't need.
Right. Well, and here's the actually kind of a little bit of the opposite is echo chambers. So
Yeah.
They, I mean, that's kind of self-evident and just that right there. But the 3 points that the article pointed out was consider an advisory board. Another one was a creation of a board helps create professionalism and can maintain that business discussion that we talked about, separating business from family. And then the third part was maybe use outside members as part of the advisory board. So we talked about Braden having kind of that experience with the grasses and stuff like that. But if we were to look at it as a business structure and say, hey, how can we really improve this as a business? We're looking cash inflow, cash outflow, looking at more from that financial and strategy wise, maybe it would be better to do a outside member, somebody looking in and really diving in, almost like an auditor, and telling you, hey, maybe you should suggest, think about it this way, think about it that way. Look, I've seen things done this way at other locations. You might consider doing that. But a lot of the times, because we all are a nuclearized family, sometimes having somebody from the outside brings in that fresh idea that instead of all of us thinking the same way, it helps bring it in and kind of refresh the thought process.
Yeah, that can work well. That can also go very badly too, where a committee, nothing good comes out of a committee.
Yeah.
Committees tend to be nothing more than
organized chaos,
hostage negotiation, and you just kind of settle on something in the middle that nobody cares for. Isn't necessarily wrong, but it isn't necessarily the most productive either. It doesn't necessarily solve problems. They tend to be solution driven instead of process driven in some ways too, which I mean, there's value in that, but that can be its own echo chamber as well. But it is good to have an outside view of something, for sure. I mean, we tend to live in bubbles. We tend to say, yeah, we're doing this right, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it this way. Well, how do you know?
Yeah.
How can you measure that, right, if you haven't done anything different? So that's a very, very valid thing. You want people on an advisory board that really care.
Yeah.
Do they care about?
They have vested interest in seeing the success of the business. Yeah.
Right. And so if you can get your family to be your own committee, and you sit down and you do that structured in a very formal way, I think that's important. Like our annual ranch meeting, it's actually fairly formal,
Right.
And I think some good comes out of it. It's mostly informative. It's, but still we're asking some questions about it as well, and trying to come up with some solutions. But you want to be able to have people on there you can depend on. And if you can depend on yourselves the most, being able to speak freely is important. And that's, again, you're kind of going right back to number one again, right? Number one. And number two, And you got to practice that, being a good human to each other, regardless of whether it's the relationship is spouse or child or sibling. It's irrelevant. It's still, you're an adult and you have good ideas. I'm an adult, I got some bad ideas too.
Yeah.
To really call me out for it. Hey, why is this? Why do you think this is a bad idea? And we talk those out. We look at them and you go, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. Or you saying this and they go, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, maybe that's not such a bad idea. I mean, it happens both ways, and that's a healthy exchange.
Yeah, I agree. And now the one part
Violently agree.
Yeah. The one part that this was all talking about was, it was the challenges of family business, right? But the article did kind of close it all up and said, there are benefits too. It's the best of both worlds. You have a closeness within a business. You oftentimes, if you do it right, you have clear communication within the business. And then everybody, as you pointed out, a very common goal, and everybody is working towards that exact same end state. Everybody wants to see success. Everybody wants to see growth. Everybody wants to see that this is a good thing and it's not going to struggle. So I think despite those difficulties, you can get through them as long as you address them and you make sure that you do it in a respectful manner. But really, if you're able to maintain a professional family business and still maintain a good family relationship structure as well, it can be the best of both worlds, because all of that, the closeness, clear communication, and a common goal, and on top of that, you probably trust each other and you're willing to do a little bit more and kind of go more out on a limb, knowing that the other person has your back and is willing to do something as well.
Right. We had a neighbor show up one day. God, a couple of years ago, Braden was helping me calve. I think he was just finishing his degree. All the COVID stuff hit, and the guy come in the yard and he's wanting to know some things, and he says he didn't know Braden. He didn't recognize him because the last time I think he saw him, he was pretty small, but now it's this burly guy with a beard, and he goes kind of looks and goes, "Do you trust him?" I'm like, "With my life." Right. I mean, yeah. So yeah, that trust is a big part of that, but I don't think people from the outside necessarily see, and that trust is developed. There's different levels of that, different reasons for that. Again, the whole family dynamics, there's trust there, but there's also trust about, do I know this guy's going to do the right thing while we're doing something? Of course, or does he know how? Do I trust that he understands? Different levels of different types of trust. Would he ever do anything that would hurt me? No.
It may be stuff as simple as, will that person handle the animals the way I want them handled too?
Yeah.
If I tell them to go gather the cows, are they going to create havoc, possibly have animals cut up and fences torn up? Or do I know it's going to be nice and calm and cool and collected? Animals aren't going to be riled up and they'll be easy to handle once they arrive. There's even something as simple
and forevermore.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause we've had some of those where we've needed help and the help was
never invited
worse than no help. I'd rather have no help than bad help. So that happens, and you go to different places and you see how they handle stuff, and you're like, this is why we don't do this.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you've seen it. Yeah. But the other part besides the trust issue is ego. You've got to set your ego aside. And I can remember being asked things when I was in high school by my grandpa and my dad. And I'm like, I don't know. Well, what do you think? And they're teaching me, to, think through it, think critically, and give my opinion. And if it's wrong, or you take a course of action and it's not what you wanted, you have to put your ego aside and say, might be something to this. Let's try it. Let's see. And we'll adjust. It may not be the perfect plan right off the bat, but we're going to think this thing through to where we think it is, or we believe it is, or we're going to make every effort that it is. And even if it's not something you want to do, don't sabotage it.
Right.
Don't have your ego get in the way, because it might turn out to be something that you can improve on even more. I mean, there's a lot of things there that are personality driven, or the potential for personalities to drive them down, not just in the right direction. You always assume that things are headed, in the most positive way you want them to go, but you get an ego involved in there, and somebody will watch you do something that is detrimental and not say anything. That isn't good either.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can't have that. I've seen people do that. Yeah. Let somebody fail miserably, let them go up in flames, and then just go,
yeah, whatever. Not my problem.
Teaching you a lesson, didn't I? Exactly. You know, and it's nothing more. That's just laying out a tape measure and seeing, you know, who's measuring longer. That serves no good purpose.
Yeah. That actually, well, we used up a whole lot more time than I thought we would.
Wow.
But those are two big points. Again, when you're looking at anything when it involves agriculture, horse training, whatever, it's not a how-to guide. To please, whatever you do, don't ever treat it as this is how to do it. It's a cookie cutter. This is a step-by-step process. Take in as much information as you possibly can, apply it as applicable to your situation, to your ranching style, farming style, the animals you're using, and don't take anything word like it's the gospel and you have to do it. And then on the second part, you know, if much like most of the agriculture community, you're probably running a family business, so watch out for some of those 4 pitfalls and look at ways to try and address those and be respectful and work through that so that your family business is successful. And again, not a how-to guide, but it's a suggestion on some of the things that you could be looking for. And when you do it successfully, it can be the best of both worlds. Like we said, you got the closeness, high trust, you're all going towards the same end goal. But with that, I'll hand it to Dad.
Well, just a couple of things to wrap that up. Yeah, you may have a couple of 3 or 4 different ways of looking at things from other people. Take what's the best and use it.
Yep.
You know, you may be able to morph something into an application that's going to work fantastically for you. A big elephant in the room we didn't really talk about. I mean, sort of did, but spouses and a number of spouses working together that are kind of there on the outside, but of maybe the same gender and don't get along or have little hissy fits. And I hate to say it, but typically women are like that. Pardon me. You know, they'll have these little spats and they're all about who's the queen of the day. Don't allow it. Can't happen. I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen with, now their women are long gone dead, but not positive. Did nothing to help, but they were queen for the day. And that constant fight just goes on. And those are some of the big red buttons too. And trying to manipulate one of the workers or one of the members to impose their will. That's a bad deal. That's sabotage. Yeah. So just something to be aware of there. And some families have seen it. Some have avoided it. Hope you can, but God, I'm telling you, it's a good thing we're about done here because I'm about done. So I hope this has helped. Give people a little something to think about. And we thank you till you're better paid.